With the production elements, and by production elements I'm referring of course to the set design, costume design, the lighting design, the sound design, how do you approach those parts of the process with a piece like this that I guess maybe qualifies as a period piece from doing one that's a little bit more contemporary, or is your process different?
It's not a lot different. Since I was trained originally as an architect, I'm always involved in the design of plays, and when I direct, I'm really, really involved. You have to sit down with some of the play's requirements. If you're going to have the first scene take place in a sheltered area when rain is going on someplace around and it specifies it's a specific church, it isn't that you have to reproduce the church, but you've got to have some convincing place that represents a place where they are sheltered. Or, you know, if it's another kind of a play, you may need a door that you can slam. So there's just some practical elements to put down, whether it's a contemporary play or whether it's a classical play, as to how you do it. Now, many of the Shakespearean plays, which were done on the Elizabethan stage, the cliche explanation is they come out onto a bare stage and say, "Here we are on the blasted heath." And the stage is set for you by the language, from the language of the play. We don't do that anymore. In Dallas, the Margot Jones Theater, which is such a famous theater for doing new works, that was physically located in the Magnolia Building out at Fair Park.
Yes.
That was a theater on the round, but it wasn't a theater round a lot like ours. For example, the stage was truly all seats connected all the way around, whereas we have an axis where we leave open so we can develop it scenically, like this that's behind me. The other thing that was different, she just put down a gray carpet. They didn't decorate the floor differently from one play to another. I guess they might put down a rug. But everything was simply furniture brought on and off. That was the sets. It was so much of a pure arena. It was also why she could perform in rep rather easily, because at the end of the season, she would repeat her 3 best-selling plays in rep, and that got the New York critics down here.
And by rep, you mean?
By repertoire, I mean that they'd play Tuesday night, they'd play one play, Wednesday night they'd play another play, Thursday night another play, and then start all over again. So if you were in Dallas 3 days, you could see 3 plays.
So there's a cycle.
Right, and the difference is we can't do that because we develop things more scenically. It's harder in this house. It takes us a while to change over because we do more set-wise. We don't just bring on furniture. We do a lot more. But it's interesting that Dallas was really sort of the home of the use of arena for professional theater, and that's what Margot's great contribution was with the theater she started in 1948 and ran until her death in 1955.
I saw your production, Theater 3's production of Metamorphosis. I believe the adaptation was done by Zimmerman?
Mary Zimmerman,
Mary
yes.
Zimmerman.
Who was an academic, yeah.
Yes, and it was a wonderful production, and one of the high points, and the critics agreed with this, was the set, because you had designed and the production staff had built a swimming pool onto the stage.
Well, we didn't actually swim in it, but it was.
No, there was some floating.
It was
that
indeed
occurred.
water, and the maximum depth of the water would be about up to my waist, and it was just sort of building a large tank with a walk around it, and a kind of an exit that happened up here through some elaborate doors, and then an upper level platform where the gods would appear and look over and comment on the frolics of humankind beneath. And that was a lot of engineering because you had to keep the water safe. You had to have it filtered and debacterialized. You also didn't want the poor actors to freeze to death, so you had to have a water heater going. And you also didn't want the thing to leak. You didn't want the walls to burst and suddenly the whole audience would be awash. So there was a lot of not only aesthetics. One of the things about the aesthetics was this boardwalk that we had.
Yes.
There were 7 colors of stain that were used from one wood to another, which was all in the golden brown tone range, but it made it very, very beautiful, especially under the light.
It did. The lighting was just exquisite.
And then a big crystal chandelier hung over the pool, which this is Mary Zimmerman's idea. When when it flashed, that was the lightning, and we pulled around little boats, do you remember, to,
Yes.
to represent the storms at sea. It was a very imaginative production, and my staff, adapting it here, I worked with them very hard to make that happen. But I had seen her production in Chicago in a sort of thrust configuration, and I didn't know there was water used in the production when I went into the auditorium. Mm-hmm. And I went because people said, "Oh, you ought to go see that, it's really good." That's really all I knew about it. So I go into this space, and there's this what I took to be this very highly polished black surface. And I thought, ooh, I've got to find out what they used to make that flat surface so totally shiny. That's really wonderful. And then the actor came out and stepped in it, and it was water. I was totally stunned. Midas, the first character on stage, was King Midas.
Well, this was a good example, though, of when the set design was really the major calling card for a show. Because sometimes it's the actors, sometimes it's the cast, or sometimes it's the piece. Yes. But in this city, in that production of Metamorphosis, it was the set. There were more people that were interested in coming to see that set. And so that really is a major statement about the power or the importance of that, the total part of the theatrical experience, and why there needs to be unity of that composition.
And I tell you, I didn't say what I said about Margot to denigrate her in the least, but it shows also how we've become such a much more visual culture. Mm-hmm. We now have television. In '48, we had maybe the beginnings of television. When they first started broadcasting football on television, and, well, not first maybe, but when Roone Aldridge took it over and put so many cameras out there so that you would see the same play over and over. You'd see it from the right, and then you'd see it from the left, and then you'd see it in slow motion, and then you'd see it over. It was like dance.
Yes.
It was, the dancers always show that you can do it to the right. Oh, I can do this to the left as well. And it was like the aesthetics of dance were making that sport so much fun to watch because of what television could do, what you could do with film or now with digital. We're now trained as a culture, particularly students that are going to school with you, they're very trained more visually. They simply wouldn't accept as simple a set design solution as Margot used before. They'd just dismiss it as inadequate. Mm-hmm. And I would, and you would. Mm-hmm. But it was acceptable then because we weren't that visual.
Right.
They're literally, for her original production of Suddenly Last Summer, there literally was a garden bench and a tiny little statue that sprinkled water. That just two little pieces out there. Well, that's all the playwright asked for. But in this day and time, I know when you go to New York, I see sets that I don't even know how they do that.
Yes,
and I know a lot about sets.
Much less how they travel with it.